Good morning, fans of the Curse of Politics. Have I got a treat for you today? Scott Reid is here, hungover from celebrating the Leaf game last night. Enjoy that, Scott?
Oh, just a little.
I liked it too, David.
Man, oh man.
I am cheering for the Leafs, so I did not like it. But
I am cheering for the Leafs as well, but I have to admit that...
What the fuck is wrong with the two of you? Why the fuck are you cheering for the Leafs?
I don't know. I
Why
live in
the hell
city,
not? I
the
live in
Habs aren't
Toronto.
in. What do I care?
yeah.
So what we've established today is I am the better Habs fan of the three of us. I am not fucking cheering for the Leafs ever.
Not only that, but we've established that you are a big fan.
Point to anybody.
We can see as well that you are a big fan of Royal Dalton, and I think that's the more important and telling characteristic.
I am in Finland visiting family.
That's right. Jenni Byrne is here. In case you didn't notice, moonlighting from her main job. Things are tough. Needed a second income. Had to hang around the Curse of Politics here in the morning. Get some extra cash in her jeans. Good morning, Jenni from Fenelon Falls. How are you?
I'm doing great, David. I'm doing fantastic. Although I was telling David earlier before we started taping, I'm heading out to Edmonton, of course, for the Conservative Leaders Debate. So Wednesday morning's podcast is going to be very, very early for me.
Awesome.
People tune in on Wednesday to see Jenni with no sleep. Be excellent. All right, today we're going to review the first week of the campaign. What stood out in the campaign? What did each party accomplish? But first, we have Allison Smith here from Queen's Park today to update us on the latest campaign news. Good morning, Allison.
Good morning, team. Hello.
Morning.
Great to see you.
Hey.
Yeah. So we are in the northern stint of the campaign, it looks like. We had Doug Ford up in the Sioux, in Timmins, and Sudbury over the weekend. He was the first leader to venture to the north. NDP leader Andrea Horwath is going there today. She'll be in Sudbury, which is a riding the NDP holds. And Stephen Del Duca will be going up to Nipissing today. But before that, he's going to be releasing the Liberals' election platform, the official document. They say it's going to be fully costed. A few little tidbits have leaked out of it so far. It looks like they'll be hiking ODSP rates by about 20% and promising to balance the budget just a tidge earlier than the PCs. We didn't actually get a schedule from Doug today. I think this is the first day of the campaign. We do not know where he'll be getting it done or talking about getting it done.
The premier is missing. The premier is missing.
But, I mean, maybe he's taken a personal day because that's what Stephen Del Duca did yesterday. So those, I guess, are not off the table for this campaign, even though it technically kind of just started.
Even though he would be taking a personal day off, he would be getting her done.
Oh, yeah.
Dougie?
He's never. That's part of who he is, David. He's always getting it done. Always getting it done.
But it's the day before the debate. Like people like, can't, depending on how campaigns are doing prep and stuff, it's not out of the ordinary for campaigns to take the day before the day of the debate off and not do anything other than that.
Yeah, that's true. We should say that the northern debate of the campaign, which is one of two official debates, is tomorrow, Tuesday, also in North Bay, and it's in the afternoon, which is interesting.
Right. What were the parties talking about this weekend, Alice?
Affordability. They talked about so much. I can't even,
Well, Stephen Del Duca continued to release the platform written to him by the Ontario Teachers Association.
Oh, good.
There we go. We're right into it, Allison. Thank you for the news off the top. I got to say, I get the newsletter every morning, 6 a.m. sharp. It's really, really helpful. Well done piece of work. Anybody that's following this campaign, in addition to listening to the Curse of Politics, because you wouldn't want to drop that from your repertoire, but in addition to listening to the Curse of Politics, you should be reading the daily briefing from Queen's Park today. Alice and her team are putting together a great thing.
Yep, come check it out at politicstoday.news.
Great. Thanks, Allison.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, Jenni, you seem to want to get into it today. I
was just saying, like, it wasn't affordability that they were talking, that Stephen Del Duca was talking about. He continues on a platform that is only geared towards hiring more teachers. He, of course, on Friday he was
talking about affordability if you're on disability.
Yeah. That was his first platform announcement, other than education. And I think that two of the last two announcements that he made are extremely unpopular. I think it seems that the Liberals are continue to be completely out of touch, whether it's they've gone in a time machine from 20 years ago, or whether they've gone in a time machine from a year ago, in terms of what
you're talking about, Jenny. Are you talking about grade 13, or are you talking about vaccines in schools?
Both,
what are you talking about?
Both. Grade 13 is the time machine from 20 years ago. In terms of bringing back grade 13. Grade 13. And then, of course, vaccinations. I think they are completely misreading the play. There's only 35% of kids 5 to 11 that are fully vaccinated with 2 shots, and that's obviously parental choice. And I think adding this to the list of mandatory vaccinations is going to be very, very unpopular. And Stephen Del Duca is definitely not reading the play, because this is not a partisan issue. This is an issue of parental choice that cuts across the entire political spectrum.
It's for sure a political and partisan issue. We're just not going to agree on it. We're just not going to agree on it. I think you're dead wrong. I think that your perspective is wholly informed by, the circle in which you operate. And I just don't think that that's a fair characterization of how it plays. But let me finish, Jenny. Let me finish.
65% of kids aged 5 to 11 are not vaccinated. Those are not the 65% of Canadian or Ontarians are not conservative. So it is absolutely not a partisan issue.
Yeah, but you're drawing the wrong conclusion from that statistic, and you're talking about a motivation. I think the fact that I send my kid to school and they get vaccinated automatically for measles. Well, I sure shit think that COVID ought to be added to that, given its prevalence. But that's not, to me. Set that aside. I just want to stipulate that I think you're dead wrong on that. I don't know how grade 13 plays. I actually think there's some logic to it. I have lots of fun making jokes about it, but
if I was a kid, I was hated. If I was a kid, I think I would hate it as the concept.
Grade 13?
Yeah, I mean, I was desperate to get out of high school and get moving on with my life. In growing up in Saskatchewan, I didn't even understand why Ontario had grade 13. I just skipped right out of grade 12 and on to university. So I imagine it's not that popular. But if a person was a parent, I mean, I don't know about grade 13 specifically, but surely there are not many people who think that young men got a good education the last couple of years.
That's where I'm at. Like, people, so let's say you're in grade 9 when this thing hit, then you kind of more or less miss grade 10 and 11, then you're back into grade 12. Like, I just think saying, there's an option here that stick around a little bit more, get some more in-school experience. I could see a logic. Maybe it's not for everybody, but then it's optional. But can I just take one step back before, instead of arguing the specific things, I think there's something really interesting going on here. And we talked about it last week, but now after the first full week, we can see the shape of some things. And the Liberal campaign is made a decided, deliberate, specific effort to define themselves around education. Right. So we're on here saying cost of living is the number one issue. They got to be talking about cost of living. I banged that drum all last week. And I guess I'm just sitting back and I'm also saying, since it has been proven over the course of my life that maybe I don't know fucking everything, I find that it's interesting that they have made such a deliberate choice. They are clearly trying to associate themselves with education. And I wonder how that plays. I do worry they're showing up to a baseball game, with a hockey stick. But it's going to be interesting, because I do think at some point this stuff pays off osmotically, and people go, well, the one thing I do know about this Del Duca guy is he seems to be focused on schools. Does that help? Does that help enough? I don't know, but they've decided that that's what they want to dig into.
The NDP have done the same with health, I would say. The NDP spent the whole first week of the campaign on healthcare, pretty much.
But the
education thing. Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
David, you're the pollster on the panel. The numbers seem so low that it's not that people don't know Del Duca. They're actually seeing him and they don't like him. Like, what he is actually putting in the window is not something they're interested in. If you even see the 8% of people want to have a beer with him on one of the polls that was out over the weekend. So they're getting to know him, and they're actually not. This is something that they're not. That they're not actually buying. There's been no uptick or in momentum for the Liberals in this campaign in the first week at all.
But David, you wouldn't expect to see that right away, would you? I mean, it's a little early to find out how this stuff plays, isn't it?
Well, I assume that if the brand remains competitive, the brand will start to pull up Del Duca's numbers. and people don't generally decide to vote for a party whose leader they don't think should be the premier. So by the time the election comes along, if they've decided on a party, they adjust their view of the leaders. And if they've decided on a leader, they adjust their view of the parties. And I'm sure that's what they're counting on with Del Duca. I don't know. I mean, I sit here, I don't have any data, and I'm just stuck with Twitter, which is the worst goddamn barometer. So I don't know what's punching through and what's not punching through with the general public. I do think the parties were all extremely consistent in their first week with driving home what their message was. Out there in corporate Canada, there are meaningful behaviors that make our country and world a better place. And then there are just words, the signaling of virtue without the actions necessary to make any real change. For a few weeks now, we've been telling the story of TELUS's ESG commitments, environmental, social, and governance. TELUS is a company driven by social purpose, not because it's fashionable in this third decade of the 2000s, but right from their inception. To use their world-leading technology in a way that's not only good for business, but good for people in the world. Across healthcare and agriculture, sustainability, bridging the digital divide to ensure that all Canadians have connectivity. They put the well-being of their customers, communities, and the planet first. It all sounds so nice, right? But let me tell you how TELUS governs themselves so that those nice-sounding words become actions. Theirs is a culture of what gets measured gets done. ESG targets are built right into how they evaluate their corporate performance. Environmental initiatives, measured and reported on. Carbon reduction, measured and reported on. Community giving, measured and reported on. The list goes on and on, Hurly-Burlyites. That's how seriously TELUS takes ESG reporting. And the result is it drives accountability. It turns their values into behaviors. And it's not just private reporting either. TELUS, as you know, is a public company. Transparent disclosure of financial performance is a given. What separates TELUS is that they also believe in full disclosure of their performance across all ESG metrics and how they make their decisions about where to put their efforts and their money around environmental and social sustainability. Transparency means you can read all about it here in their sustainability and ESG report at telus.com/sustainability. Let's start with Ford if we can. So, yes, Express every day. Every day's a building announcement. Every day's something that's coming. And highways and transit mostly. These are sort of big announcements, and they're economic announcements. They're not cost of living announcements, though. So in their own way, nobody's really laser focused on cost of living right now. The Ford people got most of that stuff out in the budget before the election was called. Jenni, what do you think of their first week?
I think they had a good first week. I think that they had it was kind of a good, quiet first week, which is always good for an incumbent government going into a re-election campaign. I think that it is for the Ford campaign. It's extremely on brand. It's very authentic. How they're running their campaign. They get it done. The song, whether one likes the song or not, it's very much authentic for Doug. And I think it's a good campaign, regardless of what ideological stripe that one is running. It's very tailored towards Doug. So I think it's a good campaign. But as we talked about in terms of cost of living, David, I think we talked about this last week. It is not in the interest of any incumbent government right now to talk about the cost of living, because people do not differentiate between what is federal and what is provincial. And right now, luckily for the premiers out there, people are looking at the cost of living, the high inflation and gas prices and what have you, and they're looking solely at Ottawa, looking solely at Trudeau. And so I don't think it's incumbent on him to campaign on cost of living. What he's doing is exactly perfect for what he needs to do. The cost of living, the indictment and not going on the cost of living goes to the other two political parties who have decided to focus on healthcare and education, and it doesn't seem to be resonating.
Scott, what do you think of the Conservatives' first week?
I generally agree with that. I think, we are kind of in I don't know about you guys. Any campaign I've been in where it's going really badly, I know that after the first week. But there have been campaigns where I don't know how it's going, right? Like I sit back after the first week and I'm like, where are we really at? Like what's connecting and how are we tracking? You got your daily tracking and all that kind of stuff, but you sort of convince yourself, well, maybe there's a lag. We don't know how much. There hasn't been much movement. And you're kind of like, what's going on? I do think we're a little bit in that territory right now. The Conservatives, I think they got to be satisfied because
they didn't have to play defense one day this week, did they?
That's right. So that's where I was going to go, is that what seems to me what's going to make the Conservatives happy is they're executing against what they wanted to do. And I think Jenni's right. I think that what you can tell by the way they've handled themselves is that they've structured themselves around cost of living. Like they've decided, well, if we go out, they've made a strategic choice. If we go out and talk about cost of living and position ourselves as the antidote, there's just as much likelihood that we will actually be alerting people to the fact that maybe we should be holding a bigger share of the blame for cost of living. So they're talking, as you say, broadly about economics. Growth is very much built around Doug and comfortable for Doug. Campaign's a little bit of peekaboo, just photo ops more or less of him. As we heard from Allison, they're not oversharing any details about where you can find the big lovable lug and ask him a big lovable fucking question. And so, they get growth, positive, yes, express kind of pictures, images, announcements. So I think, measured against what they want to achieve, they're probably very pleased. I think one of the things, to Jenni's point, that'll be telling, like, let's imagine the campaign isn't going well for the Conservatives. What if something starts to gallop ahead on them? Then it would be interesting to see if, 3 weeks in this campaign, if the Conservatives start talking about cost of living, that might be a signal that they're in trouble, that they've been forced onto that territory. Because I think what we know now is they clearly don't want to talk about it because they're afraid that they may end up taking a disproportionate share of the blame on it. So it'd be interesting to see if then the other parties can force them onto that territory.
All right. What about the NDP, Jenni? What do you think about their week?
It almost non-existent. Like she seems to be completely, Horwath's campaign seems to be completely invisible. I didn't see anything about her campaign that kind of stood out in any significance. To me, it's actually stunning to me. This is what her fourth election campaign, and they are nowhere way able to make traction on any issues. It's evident based on the polling and anything that you see. It seems evident that it's Tories and Del Duke, and I know we're getting him, so I'll wait for my comments on him. But I just think that the NDP is like this. I am assuming that after this election, if she does not win. Which it's looking like she's not, that they're going to look at getting someone else. Like there has to be someone else in the NDP sphere that's not Andrea Horwath that wants to actually run this party.
There's something that is wrong with it right now. There's something that is off with it. I don't want to be too negative. It's very early and I don't know that anything's happened. But just to my eye, there's something off about that campaign. It doesn't feel like it's gelling into a message, and she doesn't feel like, to me, like she's comfortable in the role that she's in. I don't know why that is, but I am struck by the fact that, given Greg Lyle's numbers about how negativity has become one of her problems, she strikes me as very angry in this campaign, and angry, not really about what's happening to people, but just sort of angry in the contest, it feels to me. And one thing that really strikes me as odd is why their advertising is delivering a softer message than their leader is. Like, why do they have their leader out there delivering the primary angry attack on Ford, and their advertising has two guys playing ping pong? Like, what?
I actually, I'll be honest, I was watching the hockey game with family last night and one of their ads came on and people had no idea what ad it was. They're like, is that like the new Ontario party? Is that whose ad was that? Like nobody had a clue whose ad it was and nobody knew exactly what it meant.
Right.
It just knew it was some form of political ad that came on during the intermission. I guess, listen, the debate, she's got a chance. We'll see what game she brings to the debate. The Northern debate will matter. People do pay attention to it. If you remember, I think it was in one of the, I think it was in 2014. The Northern Hudak was completely like robotic in terms of that debate. So we'll see kind of tomorrow night what kind of game and what her demeanor.
2014, he skipped it altogether.
Then it was the 11 debate because it was bad. It was one debate where he was not. It ended up becoming more of a story that wasn't focused on the North.
Right. Scott, what do you think about the NDP campaign so far?
I'm not maybe as down on it as you guys, but it's maybe the best example of the what's really going on phenomenon that I'd be talking about. Like if I was in that campaign, I would for sure be thinking to myself, does any of this matter? Are we just throwing stones in a pond? Like, because I see no evidence of traction. And they might be telling themselves, well, every day or, close to every day, we're talking in and around the healthcare system, and that's on the numbers for us. But I don't think you can be what appears to now to be pretty clearly there in third place by some margin, either by 4 or 5 points or by 10 points. I don't think that you can be satisfied to let a week go by where you are not the primary agent in the election for changing the government. Like, I don't see how you get past Del Duca. I don't see how you position yourself to win if you are not clearly raising the pitchfork and making the charge and saying there is a need for change. And I know they've got this negative issue. I know that she can come off as grumpy and prickly, but they've got to sort that out. They just have to deal through that. It can't be.
She is, as you know, Scott, capable of a good debate performance.
Very capable.
Because she did a great debate performance in the City TV debate before the writ was dropped in 2018, and that sewered us. It just sewered us, that performance.
Absolutely. And so she's got to deliver tomorrow, and then in the Full Leaders debate on that front. Absolutely vital for her to present herself that way. But I just think that the campaign itself, like right now, it seems to me, she appears, she appears negative, but they're not that negativity isn't being harnessed. Like, it isn't like, if you're going to get the bad, then at least get the good, and at least get the good, meaning like at least you're making a cogent, hot argument saying that this government has to be replaced. Doug Ford can't be trusted. I don't hear that coming out of them. So I think it's even more important for them.
I think
than for
they're
the
furious that they're third and it's coming through.
Yeah. And I think they can tell themselves they're executing against their objectives, but their objectives are inadequate if that's the case.
Yeah. Ontario is facing an historic housing affordability crisis, probably the worst in our province's history. Right now, if you get in your car and drive down a 400 series highway, you'll find 10 local markets where the average price of a home exceeds $1 million. Even in small towns like Kawartha Lakes and Fenelon Falls, the birthplace of the Curse's own Jenni Byrne, an average priced home is over $800,000. So when 46% of Ontario home buyers say that they are looking to move outside the province to find a new home, you can see why. Our original sponsor, the Ontario Real Estate Association, says years of bad policy, a lack of supply, increased demand, and rising costs are to blame. If we don't do something about it now, home ownership may be out of reach for an entire generation of Canadians. That's why this June election, realtors are calling on all parties to reduce costs for first-time buyers, get more supply into the market, and end exclusionary zoning rules that keep middle-class families out of growing neighborhoods. You'll be hearing a lot more from Maria over the next several weeks about Ontario's housing affordability crisis and what can be done to fix it. Because Maria wants to see more young people become homeowners, and that starts with building a home for everyone. Read Oria's plan at ahomeforeveryone.info. Okay, Scott, let's stay with you. Tell us about what you think about the Liberal campaign so far.
Well, like I said, I don't really know what to make of it, in all honesty, right? There really is no cost of living message that comes through in any significant, persistent way. And you can argue that some of these things have a cost of living blush on them, sure. But, that's kind of rubber glove, sort of stretch it across anything arguments. Fundamentally, it's been the first week.
Well, they promised to pay a lot of people a lot more money.
That's true. But, this first week is clearly about education. And I think, there's no point in pretending that it's about anything else. And I think there's a lot of traction there, But I do think it's a second order issue right now. I think you got to establish time for change. I think you got to make the government defensive on the issue of cost of living. And, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks from now, we're going to be looking back and saying that the careful, deliberate, plodding way that they established education, they demonstrated their competence, they look clean. I mean, the Liberal campaign has looked good. Like, their pictures are good, their events are clean. If you pay attention, Del Duca is performing well at the microphone and handling himself well. But are they putting enough pressure on the government? Or are they just establishing themselves slowly as being education first? That's a good thing, but is that an adequate thing in order to unelected government?
Well, Scott, that it is an article of faith among the people that got Dalton McGuinty elected in 2003 and subsequent to that, that was done largely on the base of education. That branding McGuinty as the education premier and was central to their political success for that decade in which McGuinty was in office. So it's not surprising to me that they're going back to it as a lead. They believe in the political power of education. I assume it's different than it was in 2003, though, when teachers were pretty much camped out outside Mike Harris's house. Right?
I believe that in the power of education as a provincial issue too, and as a matter of policy. But Dalton had the benefit of an incumbent government that had time for a change, scrawled all over it. And Del Duca doesn't begin with that benefit. So it comes back to this core strategic question. Is it enough to successfully associate yourself with education? Or does that fail the test of forcing people to say, well, I got to change governments?
Well, it depends a little bit on whether you want to comfortably finish second or try to win.
They'll never admit that they're trying to finish second. I don't think they're trying to finish second. Why fight if you don't want to win?
Well, I would say the announcement on Saturday, the mandatory COVID vaccinations were actually not education. I think it's actually going to something. Scott and I are going to fundamentally disagree with this. It is absolutely a partisan issue on behalf of what Del Duca is making. The NACHI, the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, has talked about vaccinations in terms of parents making the decision for their kids, and they've said that they stress parental choice, that parents make decisions without stigmatizing or consequences for marginalized kids, that regardless of what the decision is. And so Del Duca continues to wade into this issue. It is absolutely crosses all parties. 65% of kids do not have conservative.
Then why would he do it? Jenny?
Because I think he actually is not reading the play. I think this is something the teachers unions want. And I don't think they've actually talked to parents out there if they've looked at the stats. There's a reason parents are not, that 65% of parents have decided not to fully vaccinate their 5 to 11-year-olds. And so I think it was a very bad calculation for the government. I think it's bad. I think it's extremely
bad. For the Liberals, you mean?
Yes.
Bad calculation for the Liberals?
Sorry, bad, not for the government, for the Liberals. And so I don't think it was education as well. I think that this Liberal campaign, sure, the events look good or look decent, but I don't see anything galvanizing. And they've decided to continue to still live in terms of talking about COVID. And people are done with talking about COVID. People want to move on. They don't want to talk about COVID anymore. They want to actually move on with their lives. And you even see with the masks, there were stories about he had a maskless event yesterday. Well, the reason that people are reporting on whether his candidates and whether he wears masks at events is because he's all over the place. Like 2 months ago, he called, like he trolls people for not wearing masks. Then he has this event with his candidates and they don't wear masks. Then they're criticized. So they're back to wearing masks. And then they probably realized over this last week of the campaign that they look completely out of touch and out of step with the majority of Ontarians in terms of whether they're wearing masks out to events and to restaurants and what have you. So now they're maskless, and there's another story. And so they just seem to be not living in the reality of where Ontarians are. They are literally like 8 to 10 months out of step with where people are living their lives right now.
Yeah, we don't agree on this question of vaccines. I just want to add one thing. I think an interesting thing about the vaccines announcement is that there's been lots of pushback from it with all the arguments that Jenny employs. We see it from the Toronto Sun. We see it from a lot of conservative voices. You see it all over Twitter. But one place you don't see it is from the Ford government. You notice that they didn't tangle on the issue on the weekend. They didn't deliberately come back. They didn't see it as an opportunity to make ground. They didn't think that it was a big vulnerability. Otherwise, they would have been all over it. They would have had surrogates out on the weekend pushing back on Del Duca, and they didn't. So the conservative movement, as we are also having this federal leadership, conservative movement has been loud about it because this is a tenet of that whole discussion. But the Ford government doesn't appear to think that it's the mistake that Jenni does.
No, but that's not. But that actually, you just fed into my point, Scott. This isn't actually a conservative, liberal, or NDP issue. This is something that is cross-partisan.
If the conservatives thought,
but this is the best, you guys. This is the best news I've heard for the Liberals in a long time. If they've picked an issue that people are going to fight about, then that's the best news the Liberals have had in a while in this campaign, because that would make them the center of an argument that was central to what's going on.
And what I'm saying is the Ford conservatives don't want to fight on it. They're afraid of it. They took a pass.
They don't have to. They don't have to fight. They don't have to fight at it. But Scott, I need you have to realize. Do you think the 65% of kids in the province of Ontario have conservative parents?
I think one of the reasons that 65% of kids aren't vaccinated is because it took so long before we could say, well, some are authorized and some are not. And actually, it's an argument for making sure that we do deliver it with, what would do deliver it through the school system, So, but I come back to it, Jenni. Don't tell me that if your political opponent has done something you are wholly convinced is a mistake and that is unpopular with voters, that you wouldn't put it all and plaster it all over them. And the Ford conservatives did not spend the weekend saying, aha, Del Duca's vulnerable on this. They took a pass on this issue. Why? Because I don't think they share the diagnosis you do. I don't think they want to tangle on this issue. I think
Scott,
they want to
can I go back to my question? 65% of kids. No. I'm asking you because you're saying.
I gave you my answer. I gave you my answer. My answer is that there were rolling approvals. Jenni, this isn't the federal leadership debate, okay? I'm sorry, we don't agree on vaccines. Kids did not get authorization for the use of vaccines at the same pace. Second of all, the fact that 65% of kids aren't vaccinated reflects the fact that the availability has been completely different for kids. And that actually was a public policy argument. Yes, it has been. It's a public policy argument for doing it through schools. The HPV vaccination isn't as broad.
Well, guys, it's fun. It's just amazing how fast a half an hour goes when you're having fun. But we are out of time. I've been having fun. I don't know about you two. It's been fun to watch. We normally end this thing with a blessing or a curse. Who's got one?
You go ahead first, Scott.
All right. My curse is on the NDP campaign, and on it is. I know that sounds unfair, but it's particularly on Andrea Horwath. In that, I'm going to pick up on something David said, because you said it, and I meant to today, but you said it first, David, which is I think the campaign and Andrea Horwath personally smacks of dissatisfaction that they find themselves in third. And I think, they're going through some stages of denial. They're not believing it. They refuse to believe it. I was on some panels with NDP. They were talking that the polls were tied. That's clearly no longer true. So I see a reticence there. And I just think they've got to get past that. And they've got to say, all right, fine, whether we like it or not, we're going to have to be the rabbit in this race. We're going to have to get out ahead. We're going to have to be the ones that are the adjutants. And they're going to have to go after Ford on the case for change. They're sitting back thinking they can make announcements on a daily basis and just drift through. She's got to be good in the debate, and by good I mean she has to be fierce and take it to Ford.
Yeah, so not a blessing or curse, but I'm gonna. So we saw the leaked out information on the Liberal platform today in the Globe. We'll see what Del Duca actually announces, but I'd call on the media to do what the media have done in subsequent elections in terms of the cross-pollination between the federal and provincial parties. And so Trudeau is staying as far away as possible from this campaign, actually opposite, as we've talked about, of course, doing an event with Ford literally on the eve of the election, one would call actually on the election. And so there are things in what we're hearing is going to be part of the platform costing, including the Liberals assuming that they're actually going to get $2 billion more out of the feds in terms of the childcare deal. So I would call on the media to actually go to Trudeau and ask him if that is the case. Have there been sidebar conversations, or if Del Duca is elected, is the Liberal government of Ontario going to get $2 billion more in terms of the childcare deal than what Doug Ford's government negotiated with them?
I found that very encouraging. I'm going to start spending on the basis that all my clients are going to give me more money next year.
Hello, sofa store? I want 2 new sofas.
My curse goes out to the 2 opposition parties. 1 week of a short campaign has gone by. Nobody laid a glove on Doug Ford. He didn't have to play defense for 1 day. There's no reason to believe from the dynamic of the campaign that he shed a single vote. 1 week gone by. Now you're up north for days of this campaign, and unless something major happens at the debate, that won't change any votes either. Running out of time, take the gloves off. All right. That's it, folks. I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, TELUS. I'd like to thank our original sponsor, the Ontario Real Estate Association, Allison Smith from Queen's Park Today. All of you for listening, and of course, my great friends, Jenni Byrne and Scott Reid. Thanks for joining me this morning. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.